Welcome to the apiary. I'm actually walking out to the bee yard because I saw the bees flying quite a bit from the house. They're feeling good with the sun hitting them. I'm in a t-shirt myself, even though it's December, what is this, the 24th, Christmas Eve. So we're gonna have a quick look at some of these bees and maybe talk about some of the questions that come up this time of year. Seeing how our girls are doing this fine day. I always like to see flight activity at the hive because that kind of gives me a hint who is still with us and who isn't. Some of these hives have entrances on the back. They just will not be as active no matter what's going on, just because they don't get quite as early of a boost. But we still have bees hanging out down there, and this is one of the double screen boards in use here. Let's see, let's walk over this way to the far one and start there and come back. So the classic question that we'll have in the month ahead is, should I start beekeeping? And the reality of that for most people is, no, don't do it. The reason why I say most people shouldn't take up beekeeping is, frankly, they're unprepared for it. And actually, I have that excluder's knocked backwards. I need to fish that back forward. Something's been sniffing around out here. Anyway, most people aren't prepared for the actual challenge that is beekeeping. I just have all sorts of trouble, don't I? Slide that back on in. Someone's been having a look-see. The reality for beekeeping is, a lot of people will tell you you can start really cheap and it's fun, and to an extent that's true, but the reality is, to start out, you're looking at $1,000 investment and 100 hours, and that's just to maybe keep your bees alive that first year. That introducer's pushed back too. I must have a possum hanging out here messing with my hives. The reality we have today with beekeeping is we have a lot of challenges. Those challenges can be disease, those challenges can be forage, those challenges can be modern agricultural practices and things like pesticide use. Got girls flying on this one still. This is actually a 3-chamber hive, but it's really set up for bees in the front end of this one, so those ones back there are probably just checking stuff out while it's nice and warm. This one has a hole between those two boxes, so that's their preferred entrance a lot of the time, which is fine. It's nice seeing there's pretty much activity every hive so far. That's always pleasant. So it's always be good to be cognizant of the challenges you might have starting a new project. And while we see all of these are pretty gangbusters today, this is a lot of work. This is a boatload of work. Beginners only need to be in hives every 2 weeks. And the stuff you need to learn to start this process is, again, it's about 100 hours of honest reading and going to meetings, seeing other people's yards. It's a huge investment. So the question becomes, how can you make the investment without just pouring cash into it and hoping it works? Well, pouring cash into things is a tried and true method. You can see I shoved these ones together, but they're still preferring that middle entrance, which is kind of interesting. Bees doing bee stuff. The best thing to do really is find a club that you can go to with just a jacket, or a beekeeping jacket with the veil, and go to a couple field days, or maybe shadow a couple beekeepers. Oh, that one's starting to separate at the top there. There's that gap in there. I might need to scroll with that. Probably need to shove a shim here to push that down, but you know what, that's probably propolized like that at this point, so I think I'll leave that alone till spring. They've made it this long, and everybody's flying. Those girls are still there. So yeah, the thing I really recommend to people is start by just mentoring in some other people's yards, because that'll give you an idea what this really entails, and if you're really ready to make this commitment or not. Some of the beekeepers I work with today, they're still like learning how intensive this can be depending on the season and time of year you're in. And then also keeps you from making a major investment in something that you're just not going to be able to handle, which unfortunately happens really frequently. I'm happy to see bees at this one. I was afraid that one conked out on me over the winter. I say over the winter, it's just December 24th, but in my experience, if they make it to this timestamp, that's when my other old breeder colony's there. If they make it to this date, they're going to be good making it till the next year, unless we have starve outs or I need to slide that back in. Unless we have starve outs or a disease problem, which has happened, and that's part of this. You're the veterinarian for these colonies. You are the person who has to figure out what's wrong when something's going wrong and how to save them. And that can be a significant challenge, especially for beginners. I have one beginner I work with, nice guy, but he's not in my area. And the problem he's encountered is the experts where he lives really aren't that much experts as they are experienced package buyers and killers. So he has to kind of learn a lot on his own, which is unfortunate, but not an unheard of reality. But anyway, if you start off by just visiting other beekeepers' yards, your investment is minimal, you just have that veil. You can see what about beekeeping you like and what aspects of beekeeping you might want to pursue. Some of these hives look dead as can be when you look at them in the wintertime, but once that sun comes up and you get people flying, it changes things. This is a hive I've had for, 5 years. And they've been treatment free for all of that, but those are outliers when they're like that. I don't have a dead out. Yeah. Another year, no equipment in the spring. That's what that is.
So, I've said, if you want to get into beekeeping, you probably shouldn't. And really that's to save a lot of the people that get into this. Beekeeping has about an 80% attrition rate over the first 5 years of someone's beekeeping experience. So most beekeepers just don't get that far into it. They make a big investment, buy and kill their bees, and eventually leave their hives to rot out in the field. And that's really unfortunate, but that's the reality we face. Part of the reason for that is people just oversell how easy it is to keep bees or the free honey you get. Other aspects of that is there's a lot of bad practices that are persistent throughout the region. Case in point, the use and insistence on packaged bees. When I joined my local club, the big thing to do was get the cheapest packaged bees you could and throw them in your hives and call it good. And we would have major mortality every year. And that's just not a fun, heartwarming experience. And you end up with bee clubs that are self-selected of just a bunch of old guys that kill bees they buy every year. And that's really not something I wanted to do. What we did figure out is if you do swarm captures and local bees, you can be a lot more successful. So what this gets down to is if you're just too mule-headed to take my advice and not become a beekeeper, or take my second set of advice, which is mentor for a year first to see what you want to do, what can I still tell you to do to be successful when you start anyway? Here's a short list of the things how to be successful. 1, learn now before you have bees, because once you have bees, everything gets amplified. Finding out what deformed wing virus looks like when your hive is already dying from it is not a working solution. You really need to be able to identify problems before they happen, and that's difficult for a beginner. That's a big perk of having a mentor if you can find one. So you got to learn everything you can on the front end. There are books out there, there are websites, there's YouTube channels like this one. Not all resources are good resources. I'm a big fan of the Dummies Beekeeping book. Get the most current one you can because I think it's approachable. There's people out there that prefer the Sumatro beginner's book, and it is much more thorough, but I think a lot of people don't have the attention span to absorb everything it has in it. Take a class. You'll have a club around you somewhere that offers a class. The longer the class, the better. A lot of clubs have a 4-hour beginner session. Ours is 16 hours because we realize you really can only scratch the surface with 16 hours, and we are really doing a disservice to people trying to do it in 4. And you can find most of that content under my YouTube channel. So learn as much as you can. 2, buy tools that make sense for you. You don't need an extractor first year, generally speaking. What you need are hive bodies, a good jacket, and gloves. You've seen my videos. I often work barehanded. I have experience, and that experience is earned through getting stung and working a lot of hives. Also, my bees are probably nicer than your bees are. I've selected for easily handling bees for a long time. That's when they'll sting me on the neck after saying that. But I've been breeding for nice, docile bees, and not everyone has that luxury. What else is there important to say? Be prepared for varroa. Some of the older books would say you wouldn't have a varroa problem for 3 years. No, it comes with your bees from the store. They're going to have varroa issues first year, and you have to know how to handle that. Really, the best thing to do is just have a plan in place before you even get the bees. Know when you're going to treat, when you're going to check, when you're going to do alcohol washes. And I'll tell you right now, beekeepers that do alcohol washes save more bees than they kill. Every time, every time. Oh, what else is important to say? At least 2 colonies. A lot of beekeepers are like, man, this is a big investment. I'm just going to get 1 hive and one box of bees to put in that hive. Here's the problem. Anything goes wrong in there, you don't have the resources to fix it. You need to go outside your apiary to fix it. If you have a second hive, these hives can play parts back and forth all day long. That was actually the big thing that Langstroth did for us, is with the movable frame hive, we can move resources to different hives. So if this hive is queenless and doesn't have any brood, but this one does have queen and brood, I can steal brood from that hive and park it in here, and they'll fix their own problems in a couple weeks. If you only have 1 hive, guess what? You need to buy a queen yesterday. And the reality is it's hard to find a good queen, especially in a hurry. So let's wrap this up. 1, educate as much as you can on the front end. 2, decent equipment so you can work your bees comfortably and safely. 3, more than 1 hive. I think 3 or 4 might actually be the ideal because that's enough hives to dig into and keep you interested without digging into the same hive over and over again. And it gives you enough resources, and it's not going to be expensive to the point where it's impossible. And the last thing I'll note, local bees. If you ever seen my presentation, Better Bees from Your Backyard, which will eventually get uploaded on this channel, you'll find out you can have 80 and 90% survival rates using selected stock bees. If you buy packages, I'm pointing at these hives like they're packages. I haven't bought bees in, 8 years. I sell bees. If you buy packages, you're looking at a 30% survival rate using average practices, which is abysmal. And the reality is that 33% survival rate spills over into your neighbor's hive and you get those sick bees brought in. So, in summary, again, learn as much as you can before you start. And if you have the patience, be a mentee for a year first and see what you're really getting into. Decent equipment is going to keep you free from stings because if you get stung and don't work your hives, they're going to die. 3, more than 1 hive. I think 4 might be ideal. 3 is fine. 2 is great. And lastly, get local bees and be prepared for varroa problems and disease problems because they show up first year. That's just how this stuff is. And as much as I want to sit here and watch these bees all day, it is Christmas Eve. Oh my goodness. I saw this online. I didn't believe it. I just saw maple pollen going in. Maple pollen is a really light cream color to gray to green. It has a lot of variety, but I just saw some go in the door. Someone was saying they already saw maple coming in. This is a good 3 months early for saying that. So that's another thing about beekeeping. Every year is completely different. You're going to have different situations, different responses, different ways to deal with things, and different problems to have. But that is beekeeping, and that's part of why you need to have that knowledge base before you even start. Because trying to figure out that stuff when you're in it is about impossible. I just saw more go in. That's maple, all right. Well, we'll have a early season. They're totally rearing brood if they're bringing maple pollen in. They are totally rearing brood if they're bringing maple pollen in.
As I leaned in to look at these bees bringing pollen in, I actually have to say this is probably witch hazel, which makes more sense for the time of year. But anyway, one last note. If you are going to start beekeeping, when you go to buy equipment, buy from a real deal bee supply shop. I have seen some true garbage sitting on some big box store shelves that say beekeeping. I have seen some true garbage that was purchased from the dark corners of the internet, and the bees just reject the frames. And the reality for you as a beginner is you don't want to compound the difficulties in learning beekeeping by having bad equipment. So buy your beekeeping equipment new from a real deal bee supplier. Used equipment has a lot of headaches. Understand you're better off buying new. And if you decide to still get bees, I understand. If you decide not to become a beekeeper, I also understand.
So with that thing to contemplate between now and our next video, I'll say to you, good luck and happy beaking.